Hey guys, what's going on? Brian here with Classic Gbody Garage. Still working on the 78 Cutlass Supreme Brougham. Now this is the car that one of my YouTube subscribers gave to me for free. This car was destined for the scrapyard because of his landlord was giving him some issues, threatening to haul it away. Well, he gave me a call and I went ahead and saved it for him. If you want to check out the full story, I'll go ahead and put the link to that video below. Video number 2. I started sorting through the issues with this car. It had an overheating problem where all the coolant leaked out of the radiator due to a faulty drain valve on the bottom of the radiator, and also replaced the thermostat while I was at it. Went from a 195 to a 160 thermostat, and then also sorted through all of the vacuum lines. Now, the third video here is I'm gonna go ahead and fix the transmission leak. The transmission in this car was rebuilt. I do have documentation on that from the previous owner, and the car only has about 1,200 miles or so on the rebuilt transmission. The pan is just puking, and what it appears is the people who rebuilt the transmission went ahead and cranked the bolts down on the pan gasket and crushed the gasket. You can see it's just basically squeezing out of place. So I went ahead and got myself another trans pan gasket. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this car in the garage and jack it up and remove the trans pan. And while I'm at it, I'll show you guys how to go ahead and replace the transmission filter in your transmission. All right, everything needed to drop your transmission pan to replace the gasket and filter is laid out here. I have myself, of course, the gasket and filter. In this case, I'm going to be using a 1/2-inch socket, and of course we have manufactured specified transmission fluid, the Dextron Mercon trans fluid, and I have myself a very large drain pan, and you're going to need this. And you're also, I highly suggest, get yourself some cardboard or some plastic to lay down as well, because these transmission pans do not have drain plugs. And when you drop a pan, it tends to make quite a mess. So let's go ahead and get underneath the car and get started. The transmission pan is this guy right here. You have the oil pan on the bottom of the engine. This here is the inspection cover, and then followed behind it, this square shaped looking pan, flat pan here, is the transmission pan. And this is the one that we're gonna wanna loosen up. Now, I have my drain pan underneath here. And the key with dropping a transmission pan without making too much of a mess is leaving a bolt or two in place. We're going to start working on taking the bolts out of the back side of the pan. We're going to leave the bolts in the front side of the pan because we're going to drop the back portion of the transmission pan. There we go, the pan just broke free. And here it comes. Here comes all the fluid. So as you can see, the pan's only going to come down so far. Once this stops draining here, what I'm going to do is put my hand then underneath here and then loosen those other two bolts, and then I'll slowly drop the pan down. Alright, transmission pan is down with minimal mess. And what you're going to want to do is leave this drain pan underneath here because this transmission is never going to stop dripping. Alright, now this is what the transmission looks like with the pan removed, and as you can see, it just continues to drip fluid. So that's why you're going to want to have your drain pan sitting underneath there the entire time. Now right here, this big square mesh looking thing is the filter, and the filter is held on by 2 screws. Now, all you need to do is remove those screws and the filter will pull down. Now there's going to be a gasket in between the filter and the housing of the transmission. Now since this transmission was recently rebuilt, the filter is nice and clean, the fluid is nice and clean, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this filter alone. Now let me go ahead and show you what the pan looks like. Alright, I have the transmission pan out and I wiped it all down, and you can see that the fluid is a nice rose red color. It's not brown or anything like that, so the transmission is in good shape. Obviously it was just recently rebuilt, and it looks like they did a nice job with it, other than crushing the pan gasket, which caused this pan to leak. Now sitting here, I have a quality Felpro gasket, nice and thick, and I like that it's thick because it will make up for any voids that are in this pan. Now what happens is when someone tightens down these pans too hard, it actually bends the pan, and you can see that the pan is a little warped right here, right where all the bolt holes are, and there's a bump on each one of the bolt holes. So what I'm going to do to help compensate for that, or is actually I'm going to go ahead and try to straighten this pan by pounding on the pan in the vise, get a nice flat area and pound these back flat. So what a thick gasket's going to do though is help fill any of these voids from the rippling of the pan. Let me go ahead and I'm going to scrape the surface, make sure it's clean of any old gasket residue, and get this pan back into place. So when you're tightening up these bolts, make sure you just snug them. You do not want to crank them down. And a good idea is getting yourself an inch-pound torque wrench. So what I'm doing is I'm snugging these down, and then I'm going to go ahead and get my torque wrench and torque them down all evenly. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get the transmission filled back up. The transmission pan itself holds maybe about 2 to 3 quarts. I don't know exactly, so what I'm going to do is measure off 2 quarts here on the side of the jug, and then I will go from there. Now, when checking the transmission fluid, you're going to always want to check it when the engine is at full operating temperature. Once it is there, go ahead and cycle the transmission between reverse, neutral, and drive. Make sure all the fluid is circulating through the transmission. Go ahead and check it and make sure it is full. If it isn't, go ahead and top it off, and do not overfill the transmission or you might end up with some issues. So, I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing filled up. Alright, transmission fluid looks like it's nice and full. Let me shut this off, and I'll go ahead and take a peek underneath, make sure the pan is nice and dry. And which the pan is nice and dry. So it looks like another job is wrapped up here on the 78 Cutlass Supreme Brome. Now, as you saw, this job really isn't all that difficult. You know, it just takes a couple of common hand tools, a nice large drain pan. Don't forget to scrape the gasket material off that pan and off the transmission itself. Also, when you replace that filter, make sure you put that gasket in there and snug the screws back up on the filter itself. So hopefully this video will help you out when it comes time to change your transmission pan gasket and filter. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think of this video. Let me know if it helped you out on your project. Also guys, make sure you check out Classic Gbody Garage on both Instagram and Facebook. I'm gonna go ahead, close the hood on this car, take it around the block, make sure the transmission shifts as it should. But until the next Classic Gbody Garage video, make sure you keep those G-bodies rolling.